Support for WUWM podcasts comes from Bliffert Lumber, family-owned and operated for over 120 years. Bliffert serves contractors and homeowners across Milwaukee and southeastern Wisconsin. Learn more at bliffertlumber.com.
From 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR, this is Lake Effect. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. Today, we'll tell you about the legal trouble one out-of-state landlord is facing in Milwaukee and how his renters are fighting for their rights. Then we'll speak with the co-director of the new documentary, Paralyzed by Hope, the Maria Bamford Story.
I want people to experience her. I want people to know that there's this person that gets up at 8 in the morning and does comedy for 10 people in a bookstore, and then that weekend goes to a 1,000-seat theater.
Plus, hear from a documentary filmmaker who turned her camera on the students of a world religions class at a public high school.
Students after this class are often not going into religious studies. They're going all over into different disciplines, and it's really important to have religiously literate people in our communities.
All that's coming up on Lake Effect. This is Lake Effect from 89.7 WUWM, Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. Thanks for joining us today. You may have heard that one of Milwaukee's largest landlords is in big legal trouble.
The city of Milwaukee is suing an out-of-state corporate landlord, Highgrove Holdings Management. It owns hundreds of properties. This lawsuit could set new precedent for how Milwaukee handles what it calls negligent landlords.
David Tomlin, founder of Highgrove Holdings Management, LLC, owns over 200 rental properties here in Milwaukee. But lawsuits brought by the city and major lenders could ultimately take those properties away. These lawsuits are not the beginning of this story. They follow a years-long campaign by Common Ground, a nonpartisan advocacy organization that united Tomlin's tenants against him. WUWM's Jimmy Gutierrez and Sam Woods spent a few months with Common Ground and some of Tomlin's tenants to learn about him, what he represents, and how tenants took back their power. This is part one of How to Evict Your Landlord.
Our story starts here, in a home on the north side of Milwaukee, 23rd and Keefe, with Deshawn Harris.
Stand to yourself is the best way anyway, you know. So
Deshawn is 56, but you'd never guess. She has 2 kids, 3 grandkids, and luckily for us, speaks in sound bites.
I don't have any problems with anyone. I try not to be a problem. It's easy to get in trouble and hard to get out that mess.
She's lived here for over 15 years, and she says she likes the neighborhood. Right across the street is an active church. Her next-door neighbor, Ms. Wanda, has an immaculate yard and garden. There's a corner store down the block that's been remodeled, and good vibes all around, except inside Deshawn's house.
There's a bullet hole right here, too, y'all.
Is that the one that came in from the window?
Uh-huh.
That you were talking about?
Yeah, and it's still in the wall. The bullet is still in the wall.
She says the window with the bullet hole didn't get fixed for 5 months. And then there's the hole under her front porch.
You can see it. Real.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. It doesn't look like a hole. It looks like a crater. I think that's what took out the dinosaurs.
But currently, the biggest issue in her home is that her bathtub's knobs are stripped.
I can't take a shower. I can't. I have to use this bathroom sink and keep it real. Go in the kitchen.
She showers by getting a bucket and walking either to the kitchen sink or bathroom sink. She told her landlord about this issue months ago, but the issue still isn't fixed.
When I first moved up in here in 2009, August 15th, I was paying $525. It was owned by Bobby Robinson.
Deshawn, what are you paying for rent today?
$925.
The same property, maybe even in worse condition.
My check is only $974 a month. Now take $925 out of that. My phone bill is $60. I got a gas and light bill, too.
Every month you're just sinking a little bit more.
I'm sinking more and more in the hole.
Maybe you're thinking, this home sounds like a mess and expensive. So why not move? Well, Deshawn has tried public housing and private housing. But trying to find an affordable apartment in Central City, Milwaukee is not easy. And when it comes to living like this, a giant hole under her front porch, not being able to shower in her own home, bullet holes in her dining room wall.
Was I making that up?
You are not making that up.
She's not alone.
Imagine how the other tenants in them houses look.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Repair holes in foundation and roof, replace back stairs, install fence around the yard, address sewage backup, exterminate pests.
These are complaints from other renters who all have one thing in common. They all have the same landlord, David Tomlin.
Fix electrical problems, blown out fuses, and exterminate pests.
Tomlin owns a property company called Highgrove Holdings, along with about 12 other LLCs. And altogether, he's got over 200 properties in Milwaukee. These properties are riddled with code violations, and he also owes the city over $300,000 in back taxes and millions more to lenders. The homes he owns are an eyesore in already disinvested communities looking to rebuild, and a nightmare to live in for tenants like Deshaun Harris.
He paint a picture like he's, like he A1, like he a good guy, as he say. I'm a good guy, but behind closed doors, you got Jekyll and Hyde.
I'm Sam Woods.
And I'm Jimmy Gutierrez. We're reporters with WWM Milwaukee's NPR. We've learned a lot about David Tomlin, the real estate investor from California who bought into Milwaukee almost 10 years ago. We've also learned a lot about his business model.
You know the one. The one where out-of-state landlords buy up blocks of property at a time, usually in under-resourced neighborhoods, and keep them in run-down conditions, renting to tenants without many choices.
Or power.
And over the next 3 weeks, we're going to look into David Tomlin, how he built up a massive housing portfolio in Milwaukee.
And how it all came crashing down.
And how at the center of it all was tenant organizing, building power, and tapping into a little-used law.
It wasn't shocking to see somebody from California buying houses in Milwaukee.
This is John Johnson.
We had seen buyers from California, the Chicago area, Texas, and other parts of the country really since the mortgage foreclosure crisis really got going in the very early 2010s.
Johnson is a public policy research fellow at Marquette University. And Milwaukee's housing market, the comings and goings, is kind of his jam. He remembers when David Tomlin bought into the city back in 2017.
If you look at the early versions of his website, you see he's suggesting, meeting with people in groups of 20 or fewer in person to pitch them on this investment opportunity that he's identified, which is to buy cheap houses as rentals in cities that are not doing so well.
Here's kind of how this works. Our out-of-state investor buys up a portfolio of properties. He tells a group of people, his investors, to trust him that with minimal investment, they'll see maximum returns. And they usually buy in low-income, predominantly black neighborhoods. This model, Johnson says, started in southern cities, but eventually reached the Rust Belt in places like St. Louis and Indianapolis.
I would say largely third-tier cities that have pretty old housing stock and aren't really growing. In many cases are shrinking. And they realize that even though you don't have these conditions that on paper would lead to growing property values and growing amounts you can charge for rent, you get really favorable rent-to-home value ratios from the perspective of the landlord in these cities.
And that's what landlords like David Tomlin saw in Milwaukee. Expensive rents, growing demand, cheap housing stock.
They said on their website for investors that they were spending $35,000 on average per property, including rehab. So they were truly buying some of the cheapest properties in the city at that time.
He was telling his investors that they could expect up to 18% return on their investments. And for a while, this might have been working. We don't really know. But what we do know is that there has been a ton of code violations out of his properties today. Johnson says there's a name for these kinds of landlords: milkers.
Because they'll take a property, they'll spend as absolutely little on maintaining it as possible while collecting that rent, which we already talked about is often relatively high compared to the purchase price for the home.
Tomlin was not the first out-of-state or private equity landlord to circle Milwaukee on a map, buy up portfolios of homes on the north side, and do relatively little to no upkeep.
From before the mortgage foreclosure crisis from like 1990 through 2005, about 80% of the houses in Milwaukee were owner-occupied, so that includes single-family homes and duplexes. and that dropped to like 68% during the long fallout from the mortgage foreclosure crisis. We actually lost homeowners year over year, every year through 2018.
What he's saying here is that Milwaukee has only recently started to bounce back, with more people buying and owning their own homes. But that doesn't help people like Deshaun Harris, whose rent makes it impossible to save for a down payment. The more we talked with Johnson, the more curious I became about who David Tomlin is and what he represents. One thing that did stand out about him, opposed to other out-of-state landlords, is that his tenants know him. Deshaun says it's not unusual for her to get him on the phone. He also claimed to be friends with the city's mayor, Cavalier Johnson, and he claimed to be part of Milwaukee's Rotary Club.
And how can we not be curious of the claims that this business, Highgrove Holdings, was also women and minority owned? While John Johnson couldn't confirm any of this, he also wanted to know. So we thought it was time for a little road trip.
Let's go meet David Tomlin.
Since we know a little about David Tomlin at this point, we thought we would call around to the people he claims to know.
Good afternoon, Mayor Johnson's office. How can I help you? Hello, Rotary Club of Milwaukee. This is Mary.
Hi, it's Jeff Fleming.
Jeff's the mayor's spokesperson. Hey, Jeff. This is Jimmy Gutierrez from Milwaukee Public Radio. And I was just trying to get a better sense if the mayor did have a personal relationship or was familiar with David Tomlin.
With David Tomlin? Not that I'm aware of.
And so from your understanding, the mayor is unfamiliar with him?
Yes. The mayor, to my knowledge, the mayor has not had any contact other than possibly incidental contact somewhere.
My name is Jimmy Gutierrez. I'm a reporter over at Milwaukee Public Radio.
Hi, Jimmy. I got your voicemail. Yeah.
Thank you, Mary. Mary said Tomlin's been a member of the Rotary Club for about 2 years, but hasn't really left an impression.
We have 370 members, so I recognize him, but basically, mostly what I know about David is what I read in the papers.
We called his Milwaukee-based office, sent multiple texts, sent multiple emails to multiple different email accounts. Then I was directed to a local PR team.
Hi. If you record your name and reason for calling, I'll see if this person is available.
Jimmy Gutierrez, Milwaukee Public Radio reporter.
Thanks. Please stay on the line.
Crickets here too.
I'm sorry, this person is not available. If you would like to leave an additional message, please reply after the tone.
Hey, Valia. I'm trying to figure out who else I can call that might have a personal relationship with the man, so.
And I honestly don't know who that would be. Fortunately or unfortunately, I don't really have, I don't know too much more.
In the last little bit, we've been playing phone tag with Tomlin's PR team. And if we do talk with him, we will share that. But for now, we still have questions. So if we can't talk to the people who know the man, maybe we can talk to the people who know what it's like living next to a Tomlin property.
I would say we've been a neighbor, and I would qualify it as a concerned neighbor. Not a nosy neighbor, but a concerned neighbor.
Larry and Sharon Adams.
Our approach has been being good, concerned citizens, using the talents we have in the area of community development, bringing people together, looking at housing, starting gardens, being caring.
Larry and Sharon co-founded Walnut Way over 20 years ago, revitalizing Milwaukee's Lindsay Heights neighborhood. Really, they transformed blighted properties into places of pride. And they have recently retired, but that hasn't stopped them from working. They started Adams Garden Park, which is this huge project that has a bunch of things going on, new residential homes, commercial properties, but there's also an art walk and a sculpture garden. Big dreams for a neighborhood that's been systematically disinvested from, and one that we had to go see. We're on Fondy. We're right across the street from Johnson's Park, and we're here to see another park.
This is a walkway to that property, and it's an anticipation that this new property development will be special, awesome, and inviting and welcoming.
We have a sculpture garden that is within the same proximity right across the street.
We had 3 columns total here. What did the last 2 say?
We got realizing that in repurposing myself, I have to depend on those that are behind me and those that are seeking to be in front of me as my support. I mean, I take that as if you want to If you want to be your best self, it's going to take people around you. You can't just do it yourself. You know, you'll need, among other things, some strong neighbors. You just need others.
This sculpture garden is still coming together, but you can see the vision. There is one problem. The boarded up, abandoned house right next door. The porch, the top porch or the balcony doesn't look like it's on too well, does it, Sam?
No, I'm not going to stand on that. Looks like it's about to come down. The front porch as well. It's got a little bit of a lean to it.
Yeah, all the boards are pretty busted up. There's a sign on here. Highgrove Holdings. Your place to call home. Apply to rent now.
Well, you have to do some work with the windows. Like probably put
some?
those in, yeah.
On a balance sheet, the Adams' goal is pretty similar to Tomlin. Buy a portfolio of properties. The approach is what's different. Here, right off of Fond du Lac Avenue, they want to activate this neighborhood. More land stewardship, more programming, more dreaming. And for the longest time, they've wanted to buy this eyesore, as they call it, the house Tomlin owns. But every call became more and more frustrating.
I've later learned that it is a holding company. So having a holding company, I don't know of the various investors that have participated in this endeavor. So I don't put it in a singular action. I put it in a plural action of those that would take and choose to have larger proceeds of their investment at the cost or missed cost of someone else's dignity.
A plural action, not singular. Multiple people benefit here.
You hear me going, because you asked about Tomlin, but it's much larger than that. It's a holding company with investors. And for years, we could not figure out who are these investors? Who would do something like this? Have no accountability to it, only to gain profit. Yes, Tomlin took advantage of us, our neighbors, our people, but he was that type of person to take advantage, break the laws, and feel invincible.
So we just got back into the car, took a look at the art walk, Adams Garden Park, a lot of the design stuff that they had going on, as well as Tomlin's property or Highgrove Holdings property. You know, when I talked with Sharon and Larry, they definitely had a lot to say about folks from out of state that purchased up a lot of property. Obviously, they don't do much with it when we're looking at the Highgrove Holdings property that we just were at, and kind of what that says to a community, what that says to the people that make it up, and then also their ability to keep up this momentum that obviously they've done so much. They've done so much to turn this neighborhood around and to make it a desirable spot for people outside of the neighborhood, but also a point of pride for the people that live here. The impacts Tomlin and Highgrove have had on people in neighborhoods in the city are tough to overstate. And there's still this itch that we both have, I'd say, since we couldn't talk to him. But what we found out as we were reporting is that there's a reason why he may not want to talk with us.
Yeah, and that reason is because everyone wants to talk with him right now. To keep it brief, it seems all of his dealings in Milwaukee have finally caught up to him. Multiple lawsuits from his investors, his contractors, and even his tenants.
Hello, hello. Welcome, Common Ground, the Community Baptist Church. Glad to have you with us. Thank God for you. Well, hello, young lady.
On a cold Wednesday night in February, on the corner of North Ave and Sherman Boulevard, tenants of David Tomlin got together.
Good to have you tonight. God bless you.
Common Ground is a local organization that you're going to learn a lot more about, but they do work around a bunch of issues, including organizing tenants. Tonight, on the meeting's agenda was Highgrove Holdings founder, David Tomlin.
And this is where we ran back into Deshawn Harris, David Tomlin's tenant from the beginning of the story. She was here to speak to the crowd about what it's like living in a Tomlin property. How are you feeling? Are you nervous about speaking your piece, or do you feel like it's about time?
It's about time that someone heard my voice. I've been trying to get help for years about this person, David Tomlin, and I kept running into dead end walls. all the resources they gave me, it was limited. So God sent the right people, Common Ground, Tenant United. I'm so glad because I don't have to fight this battle by myself because this is a war. You know what I'm saying? So I feel good about it.
The crowd was lively, maybe a few hundred people, feeding off the collective power in the room. It started with a roll call of partners in attendance, then speakers organizing other actions across the city, and then finally, the topic of David Tomlin.
Tomlin claims that High Grove is woman and minority owned.
They spoke about the fact that 40% of his Milwaukee properties are boarded up, that he's backed by private equity investors, and that a lot of those investors have since sued him. They talked about the fact that he owes over $300,000 in back taxes to the city of Milwaukee. And then it was Deshawn's turn to speak.
Okay. Here we go. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. My name is Deshawn Harris. I'm a tenant of High Grove. I'm with Tenant United.
Deshawn was the last tenant to speak, and she started by talking about the troubles she's had in Tomlin's property.
The bullet is still in my dining room wall. I have a big hole up under my front porch that's big enough to bury 4 or 5 people up under it. It's been open for 6 years like that. The backyard, it looks like a jungle.
She went on and talked about how it made her feel to live in a house like this.
Out of place, my livelihood, mental anguish, upset, and it's despicable that no one should have to live on his property that rent from him. Should live like that. Tenants are uniting, no more blaming us, intimidating us, overcharging us, ignoring us, hurting us. We're taking back our power.
It turns out that Common Ground and Tomlin's tenants had a plan. One they had been working on for months. One with a powerful partner, the city of Milwaukee.
Please stand if you think it's time for us to evict David Tomlin. Please stand. Let's go.
The plan? Evict David Tomlin from his own properties. This all came after Common Ground gave Tomlin 3 tests.
First, fix issues reported by 29 High Grove tenants, starting with safety concerns. Second, create a plan to demolish or sell 26 of his worst abandoned properties. And third, pay his taxes.
He failed all 3. And that's what triggered Common Ground and the city's attorney's office coming together on one of the oldest, most aggressive tenant protection laws on the books, a little-used law called receivership.
It basically allows the city to appoint a person or organization to receive Tomlin's properties, fixing them up and making them livable for tenants. And if you have more questions about how something like this is possible, don't worry, there's plenty more coming on this next episode. But bottom line, if this happens, David Tomlin will not be Deshawn's landlord for the foreseeable future.
I came a long way from not getting justice to part of justice, seeing it halfway through. That means a lot, than not having no help at all. And more importantly, my voice is not the only one that's going to be heard.
This level of organizing didn't just happen. Next episode, we're looking into how someone who's been walked all over takes back power and evicts their landlord, and how they build up enough power to take on someone like David Tomlin, who owns over 200 properties in the city and has a bevy of out-of-state investors.
That was part 1 of How to Evict Your Landlord, a 3-part series produced by WUWM's Jimmy Gutierrez and Lake Effect's Sam Woods. Parts 2 and 3 will air on the next 2 Thursdays only here on Lake Effect. Lake Effect is available as a podcast so you can listen when you like. Find it wherever you get your podcasts, then remember to subscribe, download, and listen on demand. In about 15 minutes, we'll learn what happens when high school students talk about religion together. But first, we'll learn about a new documentary about legendary comedian Maria Bamford showing at the Milwaukee Film Festival. Keep listening to Lake Effect on WUWM. You're listening to Lake Effect on Milwaukee's NPR. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. Whether you've never heard of Maria Bamford or have been a longtime fan, she's often cited as your favorite comedian's favorite comedian. For decades, Maria Bamford has blurred the line between performance and personal crisis. Her material often centers around her mental health journey and the positive or challenging relationships that shape her. Whether it's through stand-up or acting, Bamford presents herself with honesty, vulnerability, and disarming humor, and funny characters with her signature voices. A new documentary called Paralyzed by Hope, The Maria Bamford Story, explores how she got into comedy, as well as the anxiety and persistence that underpins her career. It's co-directed by Judd Apatow and Neil Berkeley, and will be playing at the Milwaukee Film Festival this weekend. Ahead of that, Berkeley joins me now to share more about the doc. Neil, welcome to Lake Effect. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to start off our conversation with a quote from Maria Bamford's longtime manager, Bruce Smith. He says, "No one sounds like Maria Bamford. She is a unicorn of what her style is." So for any listeners who aren't familiar with Maria, or even people who are, who can't quite describe it, how would you describe her style after spending so much time with her?
I think Maria is a stand-up comic, and I hope she wouldn't be offended by this, but it borders on performance art. And I mean that in the best way, because she does impressions, but she doesn't do impressions of, politicians or other famous people. She does impressions of her family or the person she bumped into at Target. And those people have become characters. Like in her community of fans, these are known characters that they look forward to. And she also just has this ability to turn all of her life's experiences into these incredibly funny, but also useful stories. And this isn't always the goal of stand-up comedy, but you can go to her shows and everyone in that audience can hear something or learn about one of her experiences that they can empathize with. So her style is unique because, again, she just comes at it from this very unexpected place, very not typical place for stand-up comedy, but it works. It's always funny and always very deep and personal, but always funny. That's the key. It's always funny. Deep and personal can kind of sound like it's a therapy session, but she does get to the joke.
Yes.
She does land the bit.
Well, and she doesn't shy away from the therapy of it all, right? Either in her own life, talking about mental health. It's a wild ride how she intertwines all of these elements in one set. Yeah. And on the note of how unique she is, I feel like you need to be willing to lean into the ride and keep up with her when she does something on stage. So when did you have that first moment where you first saw Maria or that she clicked for you?
Lady Dynamite really was my first real experience. I mean, I knew who she was, and I'd probably seen her around town at little independent shows, but definitely Lady Dynamite was the real I loved that show. And then just became a fan for a long time. And then when Judd called, of course I knew who she was. And the idea of making a documentary about her seemed very, very exciting. But for sure, Lady Dynamite was the first thing I saw that really opened me up to, this person comes at it from a very unexpected angle.
I love that show so much. It had so many great elements in there. With you and Judd, you're talking about Judd Apatow, who is also the co-director, co-producer. When did the idea of making the documentary first start? Was it something you guys were mulling over for a while?
No, not at all. Zero. No while.
Seems on brand for Maria.
He has this amazing ability to get you to do things that just sound exciting, and all of a sudden, before you know it, you're doing them. He and I knew each other. He had seen my work, and of course, he's Judd Apatow. And he called me one day and said, "What do you think of Maria Bamford?" And I said, "Oh, she's amazing." And I told him I loved Lady Dynamite. And he said, "What do you think about making a doc?" And I was like, "Oh, that sounds interesting. Maybe let's go talk to her and see if she'll do it." And he said, "Okay, let's go tomorrow." And so we're headed there tomorrow. And on the way, he said, "Oh, bring your camera and we'll just start." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
Amazing. So that opening scene is truly the opening where neither of you know what's going to go down.
Absolutely. That could be the moment where she says, "I don't want to do this on camera," or the moment where it's like, "Okay, we're doing it." But that is definitely, that's absolutely the first frame of her that we got.
And, Maria jokes often that weakness is her brand, but her story and the deep dive you guys have shows quite the opposite, for anyone who's followed her and her resiliency. And you mentioned Lady Dynamite. That was semi-autobiographical and, kind of a hyperbolic take on her life. But how did she feel about this kind of spotlight on her? Because a documentary frame is so much different from sketches that you can control.
I think she was always willing. I think, she's told her story in so many different ways. I think this was just another form for her to tell her story. I think the whole process of making a doc is complicated for some people because you don't have much control. And when it comes to her story, she's always been in control. So I think that side of it, she was okay with, but it wasn't the part she was looking most forward to. But again, like I think any version of this, she likes the movie. It was also like we focus on her family, which is very important to her. We talk about her sister and her mom and dad a lot. So I think the idea that she wasn't necessarily the sole focus of the whole thing was very exciting for her. But yeah, I think making a doc for her she was like most things in Hollywood. She was like, yeah, sure.
I'll believe it when I see it.
That's showbiz. Yeah, you never know. Like all of a sudden you're doing this thing, and then one day it's in the Sundance Film Festival. So it's or the Milwaukee Film Festival. It never feels very real the whole time you're doing it.
Yeah,
it all feels like pretend.
How long was this scope for you guys? How many years were you working on it?
It took about 3 years to make. Yeah, off and on shooting with her, of course, interviewing all the people we talked to and gathering archive. And there were ups and downs, not pauses and stops and starts with the edit, but it was about 3 years.
And with such a great wealth of archive to dive into, that certainly helps with the storytelling and her sharing it in that own way in certain points of time. But with the documentary presenting a different kind of vulnerability for her and her story, did you work with her to map out how to best course this documentary, or was your method like, let's just collect it all, we'll figure it out in the edit?
She wasn't involved in the storytelling. She saw it for the second time at Sundance, and she saw it for the first time like 2 weeks before Sundance. No, she wasn't involved at all. I mean, her story, she was involved in that she had told her story so many times. Like she just had a book come out, which is biographical. She's done, web shows. She did Lady Dynamite. All her stand-up is biographical. So we knew what happened. But the magical part to me was having all this material that's meant to be funny, but then being able to cut out of that to her on a couch telling the actual story, which oftentimes was very dark and scary and not fun to hear. But then being able to go back to the bit that came out of that was always cool. But so that was the only guide from her was her unintentional having told all her stories in the past, and we just borrowed from that.
I imagine, was that a good challenge for you guys? Because you have this roadmap, but you're like, how do we make this different? How do we present
exactly?
It in a different way?
Yeah, you nailed it. That was the biggest challenge. Yeah, she had done it so many times. Like, what are we going to do this differently? And the thing that I think was really cool is, again, it's still her telling her story, but Judd was always very adamant that at the end of the day, this is about a stand-up comedian, so it has to be funny. So even if we do tell the dark stories and talk to people and get the reality of what happened and what it was like, we always go back to the stage, and there are long bits in this movie. Like, if you're a fan of stand-up, you'll see we have almost two entire sets, which is rare for a doc. We have very long jokes that take a long time to tell and play out. And that was always the North Star is, let's tell these stories, but make sure we always fall back on the stand-up and show her telling these jokes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you have, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot, but as are now starting that initial journey of screening this film, presenting it to wider audiences, do you have any favorite memories of this experience?
Yeah. Well, I will say it's cool to come back to Milwaukee. My first movie screened at the Milwaukee Film Festival, Beauty's Embarrassing, back in 2012, and I had a delightful time. So this is my first time back, so it's very exciting. Sundance is obviously incredible, but there is one moment I will say that stands out. So Sundance has this satellite series they do at this really beautiful art house theater in Salt Lake. So we drove down for that and did the screening and standing ovation, and everyone loved it and was really enthusiastic. And there was this volunteer that they had delivering the microphone to people. And the person doing the Q&A said, okay, so let's do a Q&A. And he takes one step and he stops and he puts the microphone to his mouth and he is just crying. And he said, I didn't know who Maria was. I had never heard of this story, but thank you for telling it. And he starts to go through the litany of mental health things he had had and what he connected with. And he's sobbing so much he can barely get his words out. And that was really where I was like, oh, this person that didn't even know what this is having that sort of real reaction. That you kind of like, that is where you compartmentalize and you stop thinking about it as this thing you made and it's this thing that exists in the world and people appreciate it. That's where I try to like forget that all this work went into it and just appreciate that someone reacted to it. It's moments like that that are really incredible.
That leads perfectly into my final question is, hopefully this reaches people who are both fans and maybe not familiar with Maria at all. What do you hope fans can take away? And similar to the moment you just shared, what would you say to encourage people to see this movie if they've only been hearing about Maria right now as we're talking about her?
Yeah, the thing about fans, you don't want to make something just for fan service, but again, going back to the characters she plays, like her mom and dad, Gary Goldman told me something. He said, when those characters pass away, that's a character in someone's life that's gone. Like that's a real thing for these people. So I hope we've just honored all the things that people that love her, what they love about her. You know what I mean? Like that to me is like, I love for them to come away and saying, yes, they delivered on the promise that I gave myself. But the people that don't know her, I want people to experience her. I want people to know that there's this person that gets up at 8 in the morning and does comedy for 10 people in a bookstore, and then that weekend goes to a 1,000-seat theater. And so many comedians these days put her on their Mount Rushmore of the greatest of all time with, Richard Pryor and Dangerfield, and then Maria is on there as well. Like she is that revered in this industry, and she doesn't have the desire or the platform to be that. You know what I mean? Like she should be a bigger name, but I think she's fine where she is in life. She likes her career and she likes her lot. But yeah, I'd love a lot of people to watch this and come away with like, oh, look at this woman being amazing.
Well, it was a great documentary. I really enjoyed watching it. So, Neil, I want to thank you so much for joining me to talk about Paralyzed by Hope, the Maria Bamford story.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Can't wait to see everyone in Milwaukee.
Neil Berkeley is the co-director, along with Judd Apatow, of the new documentary, Paralyzed by Hope, the Maria Bamford story. It will be showing at the Milwaukee Film Festival on April 18th and 19th, and Berkeley will be attending both screenings for filmmaker Q&As. You can find out more information at wuwm.com. We'll take one more break, and when we come back, we'll learn about the documentary called All of the Above, which focuses on a world religions high school class. That's next on Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. This is Lake Effect on 89.7 WUWM. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. A new documentary looks at what students with different faith backgrounds can learn from each other. The film focuses on an ambitious teacher and his students in a world religions class at Prospect High School in Mount Prospect, Illinois. It's showing at the Milwaukee Film Festival, and ahead of that, WUWM's Mayan Silver spoke with filmmaker Allison Walsh and producer Lily Chi about the project and what it's all about.
First of all, I'd just like to say that I liked your clever titling of the film, All of the Above. I didn't really get it until after I had finished watching the movie, but obviously this is my take. It's a reference to the multiple choice question exams that you may have taken in high school, but also more symbolically, like what's above, as in God, spirituality, religion. How did you guys come up with that name?
Oh, you got it. That is exactly, we even thought about having a Scantron on our poster to make it very clear. But yeah, we had been making this film for 6 years, for a long time. We just called it Teaching About Religion because it was very hard to sort of encompass what the film was in the title. And we workshopped the title for a couple years, and my sister is the one that came up with All of the Above. She also was really pushing for Tests of Faith, but we liked All of the Above the best.
That's cool. Lily, did you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, and I think it starts with an A. It's always good to start with the film title with an A. It always shows up at all the film program at the very beginning. So I'm very happy with the title.
That's cool. That's a good point. So Allison, you are a former student in this world religions class. You were at Prospect High School in Mount Prospect, Illinois, where you filmed the documentary. And there's even a short scene at the beginning of the film where you let the class and also the film audience know that you were part of this class. How did that spur you doing this whole documentary?
Yeah, so, when I took the class when I was a senior in high school, I really hadn't learned about other religions. I didn't have any understanding or idea that I was even interested in this subject. But I was really passionate about my own Christian faith. And this class really just blew my mind. It was such a paradigm shift. And what I found the most striking was learning about my classmates' faiths and classmates that I had been in school with for years. And I knew so little about their background and their faith. And when I learned about it, I realized, I just had these deep connections with my classmates. So that inspired me to, eventually become a documentary filmmaker where every day I get to listen to different perspectives on the world. And so when I was starting to make documentaries, I just had always kept thinking about this class and I wanted to come back. But I wanted to tell the story in the present day and see if we could capture students' experiences live and see their reactions on their faces, the aha moments, right, in person.
Yeah, there are a lot of interfaith student relationships in this film. I think you probably made a concerted effort to include that, right?
Yeah, and I think it came really naturally. It was a cool, I think we have a lot of interfaith relationships in our lives, but we don't talk about religion very often, so it's not always present. And so the students in the class, I think they discovered how much they discovered so much about each other's faiths and realized how much their relationship was an interfaith relationship.
And a lot of this film focuses on, of course, the teacher of the class. His name is John. I don't think I caught his last name in the film.
Camardella, but the kids call him Cuba. He's a cool teacher.
Cuba. Okay, gotcha. Cuba, nice. Okay, so Mr. Camardella, he really had a fascinating journey into world religions. His mom was a nun, his dad was a Catholic brother, and they both left the church after decades to presumably marry each other. After that, they had what the film describes as an open-armed approach to friends and strangers, and John describes as how they sort of literally expand the table by having these large dinners and hosting people from different backgrounds at their house. So this is sort of his origin story. What else did you learn about Cuba or Mr. Cubandela from his trajectory into teaching world religions?
I think I actually started on the film as an assistant editor, so I actually went through a lot of our footage before I started producing the film. So Allison and I, we really know the film pretty well, and I think I was very impressed by Cuba's openness to, students from different faiths, and also he himself really pushes himself really hard to. He's really devoted to the interfaith work. He is a Harvard scholar, and he got a master in religion and public life from Harvard because he really wanted to bring this kind of education to different schools and work with school administrators to promote this class. So I think for me, it's really inspiring to see someone who is so passionate about what they're doing and really dedicated to bring education and just really fundamental good values to students in the next generation. So to me, that's a very surprising fact to know about Cuba. And he also was a former basketball coach. So we also got to witness like his sporty side of it, and working with the boys, teenage boys, not the easiest group to work with. And he was able to use his basketball experience to coach and educate teenage boys so that way. So those are the things that I think were not in the film, but it was present in the footage, and I'm very happy that I got to experience that. Allison, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, I would just echo that. I mean, I think you answered that really well. I've known him for a long time, first as my teacher, and then we've stayed in touch and became family friends. So yeah, it was so great to get to spend a whole year filming him.
This is Lake Effect. I'm WEWM's Maayan Silver, speaking with producers and filmmakers Allison Walsh and Lily Chi from All of the Above, which is showing in the Milwaukee Film Festival. And was there something in the course of filming and creating this documentary that, it seems like rather a large bite to take to try to cover a world religion class with so many different kinds of religions and so many different kinds of ways of practicing, and then to fit those pieces of wisdom into one film, and then also to focus on high school students who are extremely sometimes shy to talk, or they might not want to be on camera. So was there anything that really surprised you about making this film that you weren't expecting?
Well, I feel like I loved your question, this line of questioning, because I think what the students learn is not just facts and knowledge, but also a skill set of how to move forward in the world and how to be a good neighbor and live in a pluralistic democracy. And we're not always going to know the answers, right? And I think John, the teacher, he really prides himself on students after this class are often not going into religious studies. They're going all over into different disciplines. And it's really important to have religiously literate people, in our communities. So that's what I think was so cool. And seeing the class evolve for me from when I was a high school senior until, 13 years later when I came back to see where the class is at now, that skill set is just more and more refined. So yeah, maybe you don't know the answer to every question, but you have the confidence to ask the question and to do so in a respectful way. And I find that incredibly profound.
Also, interrogating sources is something that can really help you how information is distributed today. It's always a good thing to discover how to ask questions and to interrogate who's talking to you and where the information is coming from. So those are things that even goes beyond religion. Cuba also teaches an adult world religions class, in part, because he got a lot of emails from, quote, concerned parents about what he was teaching their children. What did you learn about that over the course of producing the film?
Yeah, I think from our experience, most parents, they were curious about what is happening in the class, and that provides a window opportunity for them to, one, know about what John is teaching in the class, but two, I think a lot of people came out of the parent class feel like they are receiving the education that, they are learning something new about their own religion or other people's religion that they previously didn't know about. So I feel like that parent class is also an asset in the community now for the school parents to get to know what the school is teaching their kids and also learning something new, because I think as adults, especially after you became parents, you don't really get the opportunity to learn and have a space dedicated to getting new knowledge. So I feel like it's a very valuable existence in the community.
Well, this film will be at the Milwaukee Film Festival. Allison Walsh and Lily Chi, thank you so much for joining me on Lake Effect.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Lily Chi is the producer of the documentary All of the Above. We also heard from the filmmaker Allison Walsh. They both joined WUWM's Mayan Silver. The film is showing tomorrow evening at the Oriental Theater as a part of the Milwaukee Film Festival. Milwaukee Film is a financial supporter of WUWM. And that wraps up today's show. I'm Audrey Nowakowski. If you've missed any of Lake Effect this week, remember you can find all of our conversations at WUWM.com. If you'd like to take us on the go, just download the Lake Effect podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Tomorrow on Lake Effect, we'll bring you some of our favorite stories from the week, including how the Milwaukee Public Museum revolutionized the way other museums use dioramas. And we'll tell you about the return of Wisconsin's fire prevention mascot, Torchy. Thank you so much for joining us today, right here on listener-supported 89.7 WUWM Milwaukee's NPR.